What's happening, good people? Welcome to the channel. My name is Wes, aka Mr. Budget Watch, and today we'll be getting a little in depth with this new release from San Martin, which could potentially be their best value offering. Now, the San Martin official store on AliExpress did provide this watch at a small discount, but you guys know that does not impact my judgment. You can find the link to this watch down in the description. So now let's jump in and talk all the good and bad of this Type B flieger. Kicking things off with the all-important sizes, and we have a nice compact diameter of 39.1mm. This increases to 42.3 when you include the crown. A surprisingly long lug-to-lug of 49.3 and a thickness of 12.3, which actually isn't too bad at all. Lug width is a pretty bog standard but quite useful 20mm, while the screw down crown is a nice size at 6.2mm. The SN030-G-V2 weighs in at 133 gram, size for my 6-inch wrist, with of course increases if you do put more link back in. It has a sapphire crystal with some nice generous AR, full 316L stainless steel throughout. A 200 meter water rating is actually a nice surprise for a flieger as well, and is thanks to the screw down crown and case back. The styling of this Type B is pretty typical and what you can come to expect from a Type B, so there's no real boundaries or boats pushed here. We start with a simple fixed bezel which has some nice brushing, and it does slope very well down to that mid case. The dial, though compact, is quite legible with a cleanly done and well defined minute track. The markers are simplistic and done in a form of basic rectangles with a mix of small and larger ones for your minutes and for your hours. Again, these are very cleanly done, like the minute track. Sitting below the 12 o'clock is an upwards facing arrow, which is done so you can always tell the correct orientation of the watch even in the dark. Around the dial you'll find a typical Type B layout with the large numerals for the minute and a smaller ring for your hour. Though not done in a traditional sense when compared to a Type A, this is still really easy to tell the time on thanks to perfectly proportioned, sharp and well done hands. These point exactly where is needed, which just makes everything so much easier. The shorter hand covers your hour, whereas the larger minute covers, of course, the minute track. They extend right where they should, not being too large nor too short. The hands are also well done, really clean and packed full of loom. The second hand is extremely long too and has a thin painted needle end with a black counterbalance that sort of blends really nicely with the subtly textured matte black dial, and it just creates a really cool sort of floating effect. I think it's very well done. The dial is deep and dark and allows the numerals and hands to really pop, creating quite a legible dial even despite its small size. The sides of the watch case are very nicely brushed with a soft, smooth satinized finish that is neat and well executed. There's also a very nice downturn to those lugs, which makes the slightly longer lug-to-lug wear a little bit smaller, but more on that later on. The opposing side houses this screw down and signed crown, which is again very well done with mixed finishing, and in fact the only branding you'll find on the entire case. But what I will say about this is that sticky blue plastic was a nightmare to remove from all the little details, and it did take longer than it should have. The case back is sterile and has no branding nor any specs in sight. All that you'll find here is a nicely done radial brush finish and notches to remove the case back. No more, no less. So what's actually powering this watch then? Well, it's actually not your typical NH35, and it is in fact run by the Epson YN55A, which is essentially an unbranded version of the Orient F6922. So I think this is a nice alternative to the popular Seiko and just gives us something different to choose from. And it also has some very similar specifications and features to the said NH35. So it's packing 22 joules, Seiko's Diashock system, a pretty solid power reserve of around 40 hours, and it beats away at 21,600 per hour. Accuracy is also pretty much on par with the Seiko as well, and is quoted between -25 to +30 seconds per day. So this again is about on par, like I said, with the Seiko, and they usually do run quite significantly better between those two tolerances. In use, it's solid and works pretty much the same as an NH35. It has a bi-directional rotor as well as hacking and hand winding. The movement is really smooth and quiet in use as well. Using it is very good thanks to that grippy crown, which is a nice size as well. It has a winding stage, a go state position, which is a little bit annoying but not a deal breaker. And finally, when you pull that crown all the way out to the end, you can hack the seconds and adjust the time. This is equally as smooth as the winding, and I would say on par again with the Seiko, and is a real joy to use, no issues with it at all. Then when you actually go to put the crown back in, screwing it back in is pretty much drama free as well. All in all, a solid put together case with a really good movement to boot is nothing to really complain about, and all is good there. It isn't all perfect though, as I do have one minor issue to mention, and that is the inner part of the lugs. Speaking of though, these are very well done again, really nice satinized brushing, but the inside of them do have some sharp edges. Not too much noticeable when you've got them on the bracelet, though it is a little bit more of a concern when you put them on the strap, so just keep that in mind. As for the included bracelet, we do also have a minor complaint with that as well. Otherwise, it's a very well done addition to the watch. Starting with said issue, and it is the clasp. You guys know how I am with those, and it is a little bit of an issue today. However, it is fantastically finished with a nice polished chamfered edge, crisp brushing, and a nicely done integrated logo. The downside, the lack of micro adjust. Mentioned this in the unboxing, but there is only 2. It's just not enough. It really needs 3 or 4 to get that better fitment for, just about everybody. The rest of the bracelet though is pretty great. We've got solid end links, probably the easiest to use screw links I have ever experienced. None of them got stuck and they all just came out no problem whatsoever. The top surface is fully brushed, so no polishing on it at all, and then the sides are brushed as well. And then you top that all off with a thick and strong milled clasp. It's got a really nice taper to it too, starting from 20mm going down to 16mm, and then back up to around 18.4 at the clasp. So sticking it on the wrist is a real joy as well. It's well designed and comfortable thanks to nice articulation in the bracelet, that taper we mentioned already, and of course those nicely downturned lugs. I do get a little bit of overhang on my slim 6-inch wrist, though it's not unsightly as some, as that slope from those lugs does minimise this. So this actually does make it wear a little bit shorter than the long lug to lug suggests. It also conforms really well too, leaving not much gap, and I also noticed that it's very well balanced as well thanks to the weight and minimal thickness. Bringing up that clasp again, and the compact size does enhance the comfort in some regards, though the trade-off is the lack of micro adjust. Now for me, I can get a decent fit, but it's not as snug as what I'd like. So finally, let's talk that glow, and this San Martin is using a generous application of C3 loom, which has a green tone. The loom is very solid, it's full and lasts a good amount of time, making low light legibility no problem, as long as you've got a decent amount of charge in it. Though not the best loom I've ever experienced, it just kind of enhances the package as a whole. Speaking of, this watch will set you back around £100 on the leather strap and around £120 on the bracelet. Either which you pick is a fantastic price for what you're getting, and I could only really find 2 sort of small flaws, I wouldn't call them major flaws, in the entire watch, and none of which would be a deal breaker. One of those would be an issue if you opt for the strap with the lugs, and the other is if you opt for the bracelet with the clasp. So depending on what you get, you're going to have a little bit of issue in that area, but it's not again a deal breaker, though it should have been addressed, and a couple of micro adjust extra wouldn't go amiss. As a whole, for the price point, it's a cracking watch throughout, which is only let down by some slight issues. Is it their best value watch? I think it could potentially be. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, like the video if you enjoyed it, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads, and of course follow me on social media at Mr. Budget Watch. Thanks again, I'll see you soon.